hear me? Yeah. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here today. Good morning to Professor Gori, my president of CSSI, and sorry for I instead Y in security. That's a small mistake. But, well, why did I put such an image here? Because we have no time. I completely agree about the directions told by Fabio Rugge and told about coherence among European states. But what happens in Italy? That's the point. Well, let's see together. Italy had got its turning point 2 years ago, to 2013, with guidelines for national cyber defense and security. That's a decree from the president. And, well, what do such guidelines say? These guidelines say that according all the Italian parts involved in cybersecurity, we had to define two goals, two documents to achieve goals and strategies to be applied. Which goals and which documents? The first document is National Strategic Framework for Cyberspace Security, and the second document is National Program for Cyber Defense and Security. These are the documents. I will tell something about them later on, but let's see before which are the threats. The threats told in the decree and in the documents are the following ones: cybercrime, cyber espionage, cyber terrorism, cyber warfare. Actually, there is a more complex classification by Libitsky that says, who says that there are 7 types of cyber threat. But anyway, let's take these ones and let's see what they are. Cybercrime is defined as the whole of criminal activities such as fraud, identity theft, and so on, whilst cyberterrorism is the whole of ideologically justified actions used to influence the actions and decisions of the state or international organization. Cyber warfare, instead, is the whole of military activities and operations planned and led to salt effects in the aforementioned environment. Let's see. This particular way to define cyber warfare is used in our national framework, but it's not the only one. We take this one because we are talking about the decree and the national framework, but there would be other definition, other remarks about cyber warfare, but I'll tell later on. Last but not least, cyber espionage. Cyber espionage is defined as undue acquisition or capture of data classified, or confidential data, or patented information, and so on. I think we need, for the moment, just these 4 definitions, but I remark again, cybersecurity is a very complex environment. Then let's take these ones, but think that cyber is evolving, is developing, is changing from day to day. Well, but what is cyberspace? What is cybersecurity? According to the decree, cyberspace is a set of interconnected cyber infrastructures, including hardware, software, data, users, and all the related links among them. Whilst cybersecurity is the protection of cyberspace with adequate physical, logical, procedural means regarding both accidental and malicious events. For example, undue data transfer and capture, change or cancellation, denial of service, and similar. I remark another point. Infrastructures are not defined, not directly defined, and that's very important because cybersecurity is very strictly connected to infrastructures, and we'll see this later on. Well, what happens? We have a national framework with 6 strategic steerings, and we have a national program with 11 operational guidelines which lead to specific goals and to specific lines of action. Let's see what happens. Sorry, but just a minute. Well, I have some problems with my presentation, but I just wanted to say something about the National Strategic Framework and the other ones. Just let me find the slide. Here it is. Well, the National Strategic Framework has got these strong points. There are the improvement according to an integrated approach of technological, operational, and analytical capabilities of the institution involved in the issues. The second point is to strengthen the protection of the core public and private critical infrastructures. The third point is that we should enhance public-private cooperation. The fourth is the promotion and dissemination of cultural awareness about cybersecurity. Then the promotion of a cybersecurity culture. The fifth point is that we should strengthen the capabilities to counteract online illegal contents and actions. And the sixth point is that we should strengthen international cooperations. Let me say something about these points, these key points, these guidelines. Well, as for number 3, enhance public-private cooperation, that's a turning point, because public-private cooperation is the core of cybersecurity, and I would add public-private academic cooperation, because just working together, we can see all the faces of the threats and all the problems connected. What about the national program? National program has got 11 core operational actions. Which are? Well, the first one is that we should strengthen capabilities concerning intelligence, police, civil and military defense. The second is that we should strengthen, again, public-private interaction, cooperation and coordination. The third one is that promotion and dissemination of a cultural awareness concerning cybersecurity issues. And the fourth is international cooperation and training. The fifth is very important because that is the efficiency of CERT. CERT is a Computer Emergency Response Team, and we are studying a CERT for public administration and the CERT in specific fields. Ministries involved are Foreign Affairs, Home Office, Defense, Justice, treasury and economic development. After that, the sixth point is legal action and compliance with international commitments. The seventh one is again about compliance, because it's compliance for standards and security protocols. Number 8 is support of industrial and technological development. Number 9 is strategic communication. Number 10 is resources, and later on I'll tell something about resources, because Italy has got zero-cost programs. And zero cost means that we need to find new resources, maybe in the public-private cooperation. And number 11, last but not least, implementation of a national information risk management system. We already saw this one. Then I can go on. Well, before saying something about the problems and the way ahead, what is the architecture of public bodies involved? The architecture is the following. We have the premier that we have the premier that is the top of the organization, and then we have some particular bodies, such as CISRI, which is Interministerial Committee for Cybersecurity. Centrally is the role of intelligence with ISI and ISE, Internal and External Intelligence Service. And then there is a core unit for cybersecurity with a special role played by military special advisor of the Premier. Then we have NISP, that is in Italian Nucleo Interministeriale Situazione e Pianificazione, that is a core unit for status and planning, and a table for cyber crisis, and then CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team. We saw the architecture. I'm quite fast because we have few time, but what is the matter? What is the core of the problem? The core of the problem is what you can read here, you are able to read here. First of all, the existence of a computer emergency team response is important. We have to recognize that. But we also have to think that that's not enough. For example, the United Kingdom and Israel don't have a CERT, but the cybersecurity strategy is very advanced. Then we have a CERT, but we have to go further. As for the resources can't be found without spending money. Our plan says we need resources, but most of the actions planned are zero-cost actions. There is no additional planned money for such actions. Then we should find money somewhere else. Last, most of the Italian policies, as I said before, are zero-cost actions, and this implies that we need to cooperate in the European Union with European projects, for example. Which is the way ahead? The way ahead is, as I said before, to enhance public, private, and academic cooperation based on active research. The second way is to enhance cultural awareness. Which is cultural awareness? What does it mean? Cultural awareness is something you cannot touch, something you cannot explain concretely, but is the awareness growing up from day to day, because, for example, most of the actors sometimes don't say they had a cyber attack, they were attacked, because they think that not saying is better than saying. They think that if I don't say, I'm stronger, but that's not the way. And as I said before, awareness grows if we foster international and European cooperation, because we have to find new common guidelines and more specific guidelines in comparison to those contained, for example, in the digital agenda. Because the digital agenda says that Europe should be the leader in cyber and cybersecurity. But in order to be leaders, we have to pay attention to the defense of the core of our infrastructures and the core of our business and the core of our institutions. And since cybersecurity is involved everywhere, we should start to talk about this from schools, maybe. And this is my conclusion.
Okay, thank you so much, Serena. Lisi, sorry. I first need to apologize with Professor Michele Colajanni, because I forgot to acknowledge his presence before. I give the word directly to Professor Thierry Fortin de Sciences Po Lyon. Just one very brief thought. In the presentation of Serena Lippi, many times she mentioned the word advanced and farther. There is the sense in cyber that politics always follows what goes on in reality. ARPANET, the beginning of internet, in 1977 had 49 connections. Today connections are billions. So probably we are doomed as politicians, policymakers, and academia to follow the events. Cyber is a domain in which the asymmetric threat always, the offense prevails over the defense. The defense is reactive. So there is a sense of time that we need to fill and a governance gap that needs to be filled. I think these are also concepts that will come up in Professor Thierry Fortin's presentation, because the title is From Late Awareness to Adapted Response. So Professor Fortin, the floor is yours.
Well, I think it works. Yeah, everybody can hear me. That's okay. Okay, sorry, I will speak English. I'm really sorry. My Italian is not good enough for professional purposes. So, right, I'm a researcher in defense and security studies at the French School of Governance and Public and International Affairs in Lyon. So what I'm going to give you today is a brush-up of the establishment of, I would say, a proper cyber defense policy in France over the past few years. And so I just entitled my presentation From Late Awareness to Adapted Response, because this has gained momentum in the recent years, and especially over the past 2-3 years, which is that's an explosion, I would say, a blossoming of initiatives and structures. So I'm going to. All right. So here's the outline. I will try to stick to the schedule, which is quite strict. 20 minutes is very short. So I will start with the growing awareness in France that the cyberspace is a new battlefield. And as French Defense Minister Le Drian said, we will soon consider that probably cyberspace is just like the fourth battle space after the land battle space, air and sea, and we'll have a new battle space requiring new staff, new training, new doctrines. So I will show you how the first steps in cyber defense were quite late. We were quite responsive. Fortunately enough, we were not attacked, I would say, significantly during that period, which enabled us to hone our techniques and to define a strategy. We witnessed some serious events abroad, especially with Estonia in 2007, a significant attack on the banking system of this NATO country, and it made the French awareness in the need for a proper cyber defense structure and strategy. It made it accelerate, right? Which led us to the current organization with a lot of momentum gained and enhanced cooperation between agencies, just to be sure that there can be a single, and that's a very important thing in France. We need to have this state-driven initiative, as in the nuclear field, for example. We are very uncomfortable just to give over some portions of control, command and control for state affairs to private components or to international components. That's still touchy with that. And conclusion that it would be a never-ending catch-up to remain a world power in cyber defense, which was the exact terms used by the exact translation, as far as I know, of the words used in France's strategy of the French Agency for Network and Information Security in 2011. So I spoke about the cyber attacks on Estonia, which was quite disturbing for us because NATO's Article 5 was challenged. It was an attack on one of the countries. And it says that an attack against one is an attack against all, and it has to be dealt with collectively, right? But nothing was really done at the time, right? They just witnessed the damage done, which was the paralysis on the banking system of Estonia. Most of the transactions in Estonia in the banking system are done on the internet, and instead of 1,000 transactions per day for some banking institutions, there were 2,000 or 3,000 per second, which completely paralyzed the system. So we found out that our good policy, defense policy in France, to have this network-centric structures, especially in the forces, everything being interconnected, all platforms, command and control systems with this concept, the C4ISR concept after the revolution in military affairs. We wanted to just catch up with the American advanced systems and procedures, and we were quite happy to have integrated a lot of new interconnected platforms and systems, and we found out that we are completely vulnerable to that because of that openness of the net and this information sharing orientation versus protection, which is sort of a DNA of the forces, the need to know principle, which is deeply ingrained in the intelligence community, and all the defense postures that we can find in all of the defense and security policies. Most of the initial literature was in English, which was detrimental to the French forces. Well, most French decision makers can speak English now, at least in the headquarters, and especially now that we have, I would say, fully reconnected the French military with NATO since 2009. But the subject was overlooked by France until the 2000s. And we focused on the bridging of the digital gap in our forces, and not on our vulnerability. Right? But we have specific characteristics. We have energy production, especially electricity. 3/4 of our electricity is produced by nuclear power plants, which is a sort of top secret structure. We have something like 9 reactors in activity at the moment. Right? We had a huge hospital net and transport network, all the military assets and sites to be protected, and of course telecommunications, including space and aeronautics related systems. Right? And this is what was said by the French White Paper on Defense and National Security. France must retain its areas of sovereignty, concentrating on the capability necessary for the maintenance of the strategic and political autonomy of the nation, sort of a Gaullist flavor, even if the first people who implemented the cyber defense policies were in the Sarkozy government, who was far from being aligned with what de Gaulle had said for France. So nuclear deterrence, that's our specific characteristic. Ballistic missiles, we're one of the only nations capable of developing strategic submarines, and attack submarines as well, and cyber security amongst the priorities, where all things being somehow interconnected. So the first step, the big step, was the Livre Blanc de la Défense in 2008, the white paper on defense, saying that it was more declaratory policy than the real step forward. But the idea was that it had to be addressed. It was said in the white paper that the threat, cyber defense would be cyber issues would be the threat of the next 15 years, right? So the threat was then taken into account, but there was limited action implemented. It had to lead to the creation of a dedicated structure, and our one unit for that is a government-level agency, because it will be, as I said, state-driven, and now they have been empowered even more in 2013 by the White Paper 2013, giving them, I would say, extended prerogatives to respond to cyber attacks, even in private structures. Right? They have all of the private firms who have suffered cyber attacks have to report the cyber attacks to the ANSSI, which is a centralized agency at government level that will standardize, support all of the institutions because of attacks, and of course lead, I would say, the response in terms of cyber defense. So that's the highest national authority in information system security. And they, as my colleague said a few minutes ago, they also have to spread information and awareness, especially in the French corporate sphere, which was completely stranger to that sphere. Most of the information technology engineers were trained just to develop and to develop information systems, to make them work, but not to defend these information systems against anybody else. They had no portion of this. And same thing in the military. We had exactly the same thing in the military. The people were used to being trained as operators, but not as defenders. Right? They would be soldiers with their artillery systems, with their air assets, with their frigates, for example, in the Navy, but they wouldn't think they would be attacked directly, and there was a limited number of specialists, right, devoted to those tasks. So this is the current budget, 70 in 2013. It has grown a bit, and the target budget was 90 million euros. 19 million euros, and the staff is going to reach 500 personnel at the end of 2015. Comparison with the Americans in 2012 and 2011, it was something like 1,000 in cyber command, right? They use cyber 1,000 personnel, and they are planning to reach something like 4,000, 5,000 personnel. So we are a small strike, but this undersizing of the French, I would say, strategic agencies is something which is characteristic of France. As with the intelligence service, something we just found out again with the Charlie Hebdo attacks in January. All right. The current director, just to see this intermingling between civilian and military in this agency, is Guillaume Poupard. He is a cryptography and cyber defense specialist. He worked for the French Secret Service. And the governance of this agency is a strategic committee with people of the Secretary General of the Security and National Defense, French Defense Staff, French Procurement Agency, French Secret Services, French Homeland Security Service, and other members. So this is ANSSI. Right? You have very much like a Secret Service. And we will, of course, focus on international relations, especially focusing on for the moment, bilateral relations with the countries with which it's easier probably to develop ties because of the complementarity, the similarity between legal systems. Roman law, for example, for Germany. Right? We have particular ties with Germany in that. So with the Stuxnet attack on Iran's uranium enrichment facilities in 2010, we had a growing awareness of this standoff capability to deliver strikes on the nation's vital interest, and that became for us, without resorting to conventional weaponry, without directly hitting a target with missiles or anything of the sort. So we released a document called France's Strategy, defining the first 4 priorities. So first, we had to remain a first-ranking nation in cyber defense, this idea of grandeur. That's the first thing. Second was the need for the retention of our capacity for independent decision-making. That was the second big issue. Third one was the protection of our vital infrastructures, namely nuclear, energy production, and so on. And the fourth one was just ensuring security in the cyberspace for all of the potential actors. Because compared to what happened with KGB, with the Secret Service of the Soviet Union in the 1960s or 70s, not only a few potential high payoff targets could be hit, but any operator can be hit. French Areva nuclear industrialist was attacked in a few years ago. There was a disruption of some of the services, which is problematic. If someone could do that to some of our nuclear power plants, for example, the cooling systems being slowed down, that would force us to reduce energy production. In the winter, it could be sort of a strategic impact for us, right? So what French Senator Jean-Marie Bockel said, he was the lead man in the Senate Defense Committee, France is still late on schedule in comparison with the UK and Germany. This was our, I would say, assessment of the situation. And we had, during this period, beginning of the 2010s, an increasing number of attacks on all types of institutions, public, private, civilian, and military, and that prompted a reinforced defensive stance. So it was implemented with the second Livre Blanc after the election of François Hollande in 2012, and the subsequent Loi de Programmation Militaire, which is in fact the definition of the budget. How are you going to fund what you said in the former document? Because you need the money for that, because otherwise it's just your wishful thinking. Some of the articles of this LPM were controversial, and still controversial, especially Article 13, giving extended rights for police, extended prerogatives of police and gendarmerie forces to peep into personal data without, I would say, supervision of a judge, right, of the legal system. So the current trends are intense cooperation between services, something which is sometimes difficult, including in the forces, Navy, Army. If you have a cyberspace to be defended and you create a new cyber defense structure with people from all of the services, including civilians, including geeks, which are not particularly military looking, how are you going to fuse these people, merge these people into one common culture? Is that a new unit? Is that a new service? What kind of uniform will have? How many civilians will we accept in that? What about the interactions between civilian and military personnel? That's something which was problematic, because we have to work in cooperation to address the full spectrum of threats with the widest range of measures. Right? So basically the steps were working on prevention, that's the first thing, through awareness, education, and training, and ANSI was the pilot of this, the main steering unit. Support in case of technical, I would say, requirements being needed, defense and attack. This point is most of the time completely, I would say, pushed aside when it's sort of a secret program. But of course, we are developing attack capabilities as well. ANSI and the cyber defense unit of the military were relocated recently in the same building, which is, I would say, a physical proof of this intense cooperation. They are in the same building. And so just a few words about the military component, cyber defense. Their mission is mainly to ensure that the military operations can go on as planned, without slowdown of the tempo, without, I would say, subdued, subpotent capabilities. So the Cyber Defense Center was created with a rear admiral commanding the Cyber Defense Center. That's Rear Admiral Coustilier here, is at the Center of Excellence for Cyber Defense that was created in Estonia after I would say, the imposed awareness after the cyber attacks in 2007. There was a French procurement agency that created an installation, a facility at Bru in Brittany. Brittany is our, I would say, our center of gravity with Paris, second center of gravity for cyber defense. Because there was the School of Signals and Information Technologies of the military there. And all of these installations expanded, they created new facilities. This facility was inaugurated there was another facility that was inaugurated by Minister Le Drian very recently. And there was the creation of Khalid, which was, I would say, the arm with the sword of the military cyber defense. That's a unit to locate, identify, respond to attacks. Right? It's on the same side as ANSI, as I said. At the same time, cyber defense will be integrated, and that's a new paradigm for the forces. That was something for geeks, or for some personnel of the military. That was not that interesting. Now they have become aware that they need that kind of training, as with first aid, or chemical, biological, or the non-conventional response procedures. They need that at all levels, according to need to know and need to hold principles. So they will teach that to the new lieutenants leaving military, being commissioned after training at French Military Academy, École de Saint-Cyr-Coët-Quidan, also in Brittany. Right? Brittany, once again, they have created a cyber department there with researchers, and they have started recruiting a cyber reserve force, just as the British did with the government headquarters, communication headquarters. My colleague will speak about that later. The targeted strength is 150 personnel. It's growing slowly, especially with people from the legal sphere, people from the technical sphere, people from the political science sphere, all sorts of people. They created also more initiatives related to research and development of this cyber awareness. Les Journées de la Cyberdéfense was in 2014, and exercises as well, military exercises, command post exercises, simulating an attack, just as we used to simulate nuclear attacks, just to see how we would react if some of our vital infrastructures were hit by a Soviet attack, for example. And another initiative in Brittany, the creation of a cyber defense engineering school, with a very strong cooperation with the corporate sphere, and a lot of vital companies working in strategic areas, working with this engineering school. The first class is 26 engineers. We need hundreds of them, so we are late on schedule, but that's a start. That's a first step, right? So, quick conclusion. That's a permanent beef up. Right? We have finally just got aware of that, and to catch up with the increasing challenges and the omnipresent threat. Right? The ANSI projected staff is 500 plus, more than 500 personnel at the end of 2015, and the budget should reach the target of 90 million euros. The Cyber Defense Pact that was decided by Minister Le Drian last year, with 50 measures to enhance cyber protection, would reach 1 billion, probably 1 billion euros in the coming years. Right? We were even more aware of the problem in the aftermath of the 7th of January terrorist attacks in France, because after the resolution of the issue with, I would say, coercive actions by the French GIGN and RAID, police and gendarmerie counter-terrorist forces, we had a whole host of attacks against some institutions. In January 2015, it was Le Monde, a French paper, attacked by the Syrian Electronic Army. And there was TV5 Monde also attacked by Daesh. So thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Professor Fortin, for your very interesting and comprehensive presentation. Before giving the word to Professor Mayer and Luigi Martino, just 4 things that I take from your presentation very briefly. The first one is the sense that time does matter. In your presentation, you mentioned, Professor, never-ending efforts, threats overlooked, vulnerability which is growing, late on schedule, catch up with increasing challenges. So it appears as evident that we have a problem of time, we have a problem of catching up with an increasing threat. The second thing that I take from your presentation, Professor, is the priority of ensuring protection to our critical infrastructure. You mentioned the nuclear plants and the devastation that could follow a cyber attack on critical infrastructure. The third thing that I take is every country is building governance structure to cope with the threat. And it appears to me, I might be wrong, that the solution that France adopted are not that different from what Serena Lisi told us about what is going on in Italy. And the fourth thing, which I take, is the problem that we have on resources and capabilities. Serena Lisi was very clear in mentioning how in Italy it was political decision was that of not dedicating resources to cybersecurity or to create new structure for cybersecurity. There is a problem of human resources and capabilities that the academia need to form. And I'm sure that the two issues will be very relevant throughout Europe and also, therefore, in UK and Germany. So I'm very, very interested in seeing what Professor Meyer, Luigi Martino will tell us about these two countries. Thank you.
Yeah, it's working. So I try to go as fast as possible. First of all, I want to tell you that the main focus of this presentation is to show the difference between UK and Germany. I mean, this is really the key focus. And the other point is that we have an impression that there is an increasing divergence between UK and Germany approaches, but perhaps Minister Gianfranco Incarnato, who is an insider of the European process, might tell us that we are wrong. But I mean, this is the hypothesis we want to show. Just a short caveat, we are speaking about cybersecurity, cyber defense, and cyber intelligence. And just because cyber defense sometimes is used in different ways, here we just use it as a military question. The difference is military, not military. Cyber intelligence, cyber security, it's easy to understand. These issues are related to cyber national policies within the cyber domain. And if we can go to the other slide, this is very important because it's linked to what Councillor Fabio Rugge was saying. The cyber domain is technologically driven. This means that there is a continuous problem of catch-up. And I will also quote on this point, which is obviously linked to defense policies, that Mr. Round, one of the head of the European Agency for Defense, has recently stated that there are widespread reports that member states are concealing details of the development of offensive cybersecurity capabilities from each another. So we will find here not only a question of research and development, but also in the military domain, that each state is jealous of its research and what they are trying to organize and implement on the offensive side of cyber. The second point is about the market. We already have written a long paper 2 years ago on this point. There are two, in political science, there are two opinions. Some people, like Joseph Nye and others, think that cyber means diffusion of power. I oppose this position. I think it's concentration of power. And I think after in the last 2 years, we can see that market power is highly concentrated in a small group of private digital entities. Thus, to fully understand the Germany and the UK cases, we should also consider the role of the private companies. For example, I mean, British Telecom and Deutsche Telekom, which have a big influence in Europe, and not only in Europe. Obviously, we didn't have the time, or we can't elaborate much, but these are caveats which are key to understand. Let's go through the rest. Looking to the UK, it's quite interesting to see that with respect to main cyber security approaches in Europe, cyberspace is also considered a warfare domain, and this is similar to the French that we were hearing just before. Cyberspace is a clear national interest priority, and cybersecurity information sharing public-private partnership. In this sense, now there is a CERT, a UK CERT, which is a result of private companies plus government. Another point which we will see deeply is the special UK cyber foreign relation or foreign policies. So this is, I think we can look quickly. First of all, I want to show about money. I was forgetting this. We have not until 2000, we have a 5-plan, it's starting from 2016, and this shows how much that there is a strong investment in 5 years in the UK. And obviously, the idea of the UK is making the UK one of the most secure places in the world to do business online and tackling cybercrime. This is, you can understand this, strictly connected to the idea that the UK is one of the biggest financial centers of the world. And so, securing the banking and the financial system is one of the main UK priorities. This is the UK, as you see, the Emilia, but we'll see. Another important point is about organization. Since recently, there has been a big organizational change because cybersecurity used to be at the level of Home Office, mainly a homeland security question. Instead, we have now a different organization. We have a chart, but we can't go in the details now. But the point is that it's upgraded at Prime Minister level, and the Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance supports the Minister for the Cabinet Office. And this shows how we are, as Fabio was saying before, high politics, cross-cutting policies. And I would say that in a very simple definition, really in the UK, cyber security is considered a crucial point of national security. Also, you probably know that recently the UK has also established a National Security Council. One of the points that the UK approach is achieving is surely the idea of securing all the government ICT infrastructures, all the public sector network, and a very important point, which probably Professor Colajanni will touch, is G-Cloud. G-Cloud is one of the technical challenges in future cybersecurity. This is what I was already saying, that there is a very strong now CERT UK Joint Industrial Government Initiative. And now I will touch for a moment British Telecom. As you can see, British Telecom is supporting the Minister of Defence to protect against cyber threat. British Telecom works also for the Italian Ministry of Defence, for the Spanish Ministry of Defence, and we can say that British Telecom is one of the main European player in terms of cyber defense. So, this is something that we should take in consideration. And there is a program on that. Let's go very briefly on what I was calling cyber foreign relations. Here we have a very strong UK-US special partnership. We have usually, but we have it on both areas. One is cyber security. The US Computer Emergency Readiness Team and the CERT UK cooperate very strongly on all the incidents reporting, sharing. So this is something which is working now, and it's working deeply. The second point is, and this is part of the famous Five Eyes cooperation, we have United Kingdom Government Communication Headquarters, GCHQ, and the Security Service, which is operating very strongly with NSA and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So this is something which I think will shape and will influence strongly the role of the UK. Yeah, and we are in this case in the cyber intelligence area. Then we have other two, and well, this is interesting because even if it's symbolic, President Obama and David Cameron announced the so-called Cambridge versus Cambridge initiative, which is an initiative between MIT Boston, where Luigi was last week, and Cambridge in the UK. And the idea is to have a very strong cooperation at academic and applied research level. Artificial intelligence of the MIT and all the researcher of Cambridge. So there is this very strong US-UK relation that we want to stress. There is another point which is important, which is the relation between UK and Israel, and this has been very deep. We have a memorandum of understanding by the Israeli Prime Minister Office and the UK Government Digital Service. So this is another quite important point we want to stress for the UK. And there is a third point, which I think it's interesting. I don't know much about it, but is the special relations between, or let's say the agreement between UK and Qatar on jihad and cyber warfare issues. I don't know if this is effective or not, but you can see that, in a way, the UK is a player on in the international arena and has this increasing influence overseas, we would say. And the last point is the relation between UK and the EU. This is not new because it's a critical, difficult point. Practically, the EU is going to approve a new directive on network and information security, NIS. We don't know, but perhaps Gianfranco will tell us something about it exactly now, but it's very, very, there is a lot of negotiation ongoing just now. There are two positions of the member states on this. One position is to have a broad approach to cybersecurity, so that you have not only the critical infrastructures, but also platform, wide platforms. And on the other hand, you have instead a more limited approach. And UK is leading this second block. I was reading a very short assessment by Euroactive, which we can read. Ireland, Sweden, and the UK as a leader are three countries which are trying to consider the US-based internet concerns. And they want to minimize the involvement of the US companies in the EU directive. So limiting a lot. And this is quite a big trade-off because as far as we read, France, Germany, and Spain are opposing this move of the UK. I don't know what is the Italian position, but it's a point. Let's go to Germany. Well, we can go. Last point in terms of cyber defense. Sorry, I was forgetting this. The impression we have is that in military affairs, Germany is more oriented to defense, while UK is much more open as the French to the what we would call offensive approach or proactive approach. But the proactive is a sort of rhetorical way of saying offensive. This is the official position. For years, we have building a defensive capability to protect ourselves against these cyber attacks. That is no longer enough. You deter people by having an offensive capability. I mean, it's very clear. There's nothing to discuss. Let's go short. I don't know how much time I have. Very 5 minutes on Germany. Go ahead. Have I? Here, just to tell you that the organizational part is still home office, mainly home office and homeland security, plus some involvement of the Ministry of Economic Affairs. We have a not clear link between the civil and military position. We have instead a big investment in cyber intelligence, very recent, in 2003. And now we go very shortly to the international dimension. Here probably all of you know this, but has been a sort of alliance between Germany and Brazil in the last 2 or 3 years, with the initiative to the UN and so on. This was against the US and NSA and what was so-called Snowden effect. Germany and the EU, here you can really see, well, it's significant that Mr. Oettinger has been nominated as the Commissioner for Digital Economy and Society, and he insisted on this concept. The current dominance of the digital sector by US companies is not forever. And obviously, I mean, the idea is this digital Europe. So here we have a very strong commitment of Germany as the leader of a European market, of a European cyber domain. And here we have Deutsche Telekom. If you look at Deutsche Telekom, you will see that Deutsche Telekom is developing strongly this concept. And now we have Croatia, Hungary, and Slovakia, but this is spreading out in all Europe. It's a big investment and so on. So, Germany has thus taken a leading role in an area that will become increasingly important at the time when digital vulnerability is growing. So here we have a very strong pan-European German approach. Here we are. This is the conclusion. In order to bridge the UK and Germany different approaches, is NATO the answer? What we want to say? We have differences, increasing divergence, but perhaps what is happening within NATO could be help to bridge the difference between the two countries. And just to show the last, we have now a cyber NATO doctrine. At Wales summit, we had the point about Article 5, but now we have lock and shield, and we have, an ongoing strong NATO activity on cyber. I wonder if this could be the area in which, you and NATO, we won't have a fusion, but we might have something which drives in the right direction towards a stronger integration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco, and thank you.